is an interesting thing. I should push myself to experiment more with it. You know what? I want to put out a challenge. If this video gets 2,000 likes, I will paint a McFarlane Space Marine. I don't want to, I won't be happy about it, but I'll do it. For science. Who knows, maybe it'll make me a better Space Marine painter. Well, you heard me. Looks like I gotta paint it. Jay here, welcome to Eons of Battle, and the time has come to paint up this big ol' Space Marine. It feels like a million years ago I put out this challenge after painting this dwarf. This big ol' model, I had tons of fun painting him up, and it was such a unique and rewarding experience to work on a model this big that it put me in the mood to paint more things like it. Let's get this sucker open. I like to keep the boxes nice. All right, step one. These little twisty ties. You know what though, mama didn't raise a quitter. I did not have huge hopes for this guy. I'm not much of an action figure person. I think I got it. There. He's all right. I think there's definitely room for improvements, and I will be making those improvements. I'm also gonna have to figure out a way to get rid of the Blood Angels stuff. Some of it's gonna be really easy, like just the painted on stuff, but these little blood drips, gotta get rid of those somehow. I think I can manage. He's not the greatest action figure ever made. His joints are a little gummy. His hands are a little loose. They remind me a little bit of the old Star Wars Kenner Claw. But he's all right. I think there's definitely something I can do with him. And his giant plasma Primaris rifle. Now, I bet this is going to take a lot longer to paint than a normal Space Marine because he is so much bigger than a normal Space Marine. I have the perfect thing to compare him to right here. And you know what? I think the little one is actually better. I don't know, my big complaint with these big figures is they didn't try that hard to upgrade them. I mean, this guy is exactly as detailed as this guy, which is silly because this guy is as detailed as he is because of the scale he's in. If this guy were in a higher scale, he should have a lot more detail, but he kind of doesn't. He just has the normal Space Marine level of detail. But I think I can do plenty of repair work with my paint job. But what chapter will I paint him in? Well, I wasn't super sure. I think Black Templars would be the obvious choice. I'm a big old Black Templar player, but I have collected and painted so much black armor over the years, I really didn't feel like painting some more. I really didn't feel like making a decision, so I dodged it and I left it up to my patrons over on Patreon. I gave them a selection of options and they did not disappoint. By an incredibly slim margin, Lamenters won. And that's really cool. I don't think I would have picked Lamenters. They're a cool chapter, but yellow is not a color I reach for very often. I keep all my paints in drawers, now sorted by color. Well, it's pretty slim pickings for yellows. I have about 1/10 a pot of Cygnus Yellow, my preferred yellow. I have 1 dead pot of Games Workshop Aberlin Sunset from about 8 years ago. So it looks like some Army Painter Demonic Yellow is gonna have to pull all the weight in this video. I was kinda hoping that I wouldn't have any yellows and then I'd have to pick something else, but no putting it off any longer. It's time to paint up this Space Marine. Well, I can't do much of anything until I fix this. Yeah. Milliput time. I got out a cutting mat and prepared my goo. Milliput is good stuff. It's a 2-part epoxy and it dries rock hard, and more importantly, it's sandable. I put some super glue into the hole I wanted to fill, and then I squished in small balls until it was all filled up. Then I let it dry and started sanding. I used my Dremel to get it started and finished off with a good old-fashioned nail file. Boom! Looks perfect, right? Now it's time to paint. I got out a rattle can of matte black primer and sprayed it right on. So easy, it looks like magic. Now you're probably thinking to yourself, Jay, why, oh why would you prime a model? It's gonna be predominantly yellow, black. That makes absolutely no sense. And to that I would say it absolutely does make sense, because if I had primed him a white or a gray, I would have to paint 100% of him to cover up all that primer. But because he's primed black, I'm gonna have to paint 95% of him. But the last 5% is gonna be really annoying stuff, like his under armor, underneath his shoulder pads, underneath his little armor pieces. And so that last 5% is gonna be super annoying, and I can just leave it black. But it is gonna take a lot of paint to cover this guy, and let's get to it. I sprayed some white primer from above, a bit like a zenithal. The black is helping make the shadows darker. It does make sense to do it this way. That looks loads better. Holy cow. Just a little highlight and shadow, and all of a sudden this thing actually looks pretty cool. I pulled off his left shoulder. I want that to stay white. Then I began. Step 1, yellow, no, purple. I promise this will all make sense in the end. I poured it into my airbrush and mixed it up. I sprayed it from underneath. This will help create my shadows. Yellow is a tricky color. There isn't really a dark yellow, but yellow over purple makes a nice brown transition. So I made him look like a Hawklord's Marine in preparation to make him a Lamenter Marine. Now it's time for yellow. I put a few drops of Army Painter yellow into my airbrush. Please don't be ugly, please don't be ugly, please don't be ugly. Yeah! I sprayed on my yellow and my purple did its job. It made some areas darker in shade. This yellow I'm spraying is very watery. I made sure to cover all of the purple. Well, that worked out pretty good. The yellow actually covered a lot better than I was expecting or hoping for, but you can still see the purple showing through a little bit underneath as more of a gray yellow. But I feel like he's too yellow, and so I think I'm gonna try to add in a little bit of orange with some orange ink. The orange ink was absolutely necessary. It worked so good. Ink through the airbrush is always nice, and it adds a lovely warmth to the yellow. There he is, he's a good looking Lamenter. The Lamenter color scheme is a good one, and you know what else has a good color scheme? That's right, our Patreon. If you like the videos we make and you want more, the best way to support us is by becoming a member of our Patreon. Over there you'll gain access to some behind the scenes, voting on what models I paint live here on YouTube, a live hobby hangout every week, some terrain STLs, and more. With that said, let's get some more paint on this big guy. It was finally time to break out a brush. I painted his wings white, and any exposed metal bits got a coat of good old-fashioned Games Workshop lead belcher. I threw a Nuln Oil wash over the wings to give them some definition. Next, it was time to tackle the big old shoulder pads. I started out by sketching my designs with a pencil. Easy to do when the shoulder pad is the size of a dreadnought. The Lamenters must have the most complicated and intricate shoulder pad design possible. But I'm very lucky because I get to paint it on a shoulder pad this big, as opposed to a shoulder pad that is this big. So, shouldn't be too bad. Right? I took some black paint and started laying it down. It was not as nerve-wracking as freehanding often is, because I could follow my pencil lines, and I have so much room. The Lamenter symbol is crazy, but not if you're painting it this big. It's just some squares, a circle, and a heart. No big deal at all when you're not painting with a micro brush. I made my checkers smaller than I wanted the finished product, as I can easily go bigger, but it'll take cleaning up with white to make them smaller. And towards the top I had to make the checkers pinched and stretched because of the shape of the shoulder pads. It was a very novel experience painting big, small shoulders. At this point I was feeling pretty confident, and I YOLO'd the heart and drip. I painted them dark red and used light red to add a little bit of a gradient. Ah, look at that! Look at that! It's so cool! Ah, there's no way I could pull that off on a teeny tiny shoulder pad, but it looks pretty sweet on a big one. I did the same layering of red on the other drops. I did one on his eyes, on his knee, and on his chest. On his helmet, I decided to do a classic heavy metal Space Marine lens, but doing it really big felt trippy. It's all the same steps, all the same colors, but it feels really different. All right, I'm really starting to dig this thing. It's actually really cool. I have it just about perfect now, which is good because now I have to unperfect it. I'm gonna weather the bejesus out of this guy. I put a little black paint on a paper towel and sponged on some battle damage. Don't go too heavy, I'll be altering it later. Just add it on like you're putting some pepper on your potatoes. Then I took a brush and filled in some of my sponging to make proper paint chips. This is easy to do with a stippling motion instead of a classic paint stroke. Then I took out some silver paint and I stippled this over every black paint chip, leaving just a little bit of the old layer showing around the edges. This is a pretty laborious step, but it sure does look nice when it's done. But I was very tempted to give up and leave him with only weathered pants. He is getting so close. Ah, the scratches look Dope, but he's looking a little bit clean dirty. His armor's all scuffed, but there's not a bit of dirt on him, and I gotta fix that with a little mud. I put a little brown into my airbrush and lots of water. I turned my PSI way down so that the paint was coming out spitty. I tried it out on a piece of paper and it was okay, but I ended up turning the PSI lower still to get the optimum splatter. I sprayed this all over and especially on his legs. It'll look pretty scary going on, but if it's watery enough, it'll mostly disappear once it's dry. So the Marine's done, and the only thing left to do is to paint up his plasma pistol. And you know, it's kind of a fun little thing. Pew, 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 ah! It got hot. Haha! Yay, thank you, thank you. Yes, I know it was a good joke. I'll be here all week. I didn't even bother priming the gun. It's okay as is, but a couple of quick steps will perfect it. I took some gunmetal and dry brushed it onto the black parts, finishing off with a lighter dry brushing of silver. And then on the handle, I squished black paint all over, and then I took a rag and wiped it off. This'll be like a mega wash. Now, I could stop there, but green glow would look pretty cool. I put a little green into my airbrush and sprayed that on for a quick and dirty object source lighting. Once the plasma coils were greened, I mixed in a watery dark green and let that soak into the recesses. And then a little green and white mixture dry brushed on top of the plasma coils. And just like that, the gun is done, the Marine is done, I'm done. You might think this Marine's armor is too damaged or too dirty. It's undignified for a servant of the Emperor to allow his armor to become so disheveled. But you don't know how hard the Lamenters have it. Although they are just as loyal, just as courageous, and just as noble as the best of the Space Marines, the universe conspires against them. At every turn, they are met with tragedy and misfortune. Through no fault of their own, the Lamenters cannot seem to catch a break. Is it the product of warp shenanigans, or just good old-fashioned bad luck? I was not looking forward to this, but this guy really won me over. When I saw it on the shelf, I thought it looked tacky. When I got it out of the box, I thought it felt plasticky and cheap. And then started the frustrating process of no paint wanting to stick to the rubbery material. But in the end, it was pretty fun. It's a big Space Marine. I have painted hundreds of Space Marines, and it's pretty cool to do the same old operations, but big. And heavy metal Space Marine lenses are a treat to paint on eyes that are about as big as regular Space Marine helmets. He really glowed up. I mean, before he looked like this. And now, he looks like this. A fun day of painting, although I do feel a little twinge of sadness. Usually after so many hours, I have an entire squad done. But, in the immortal words of Gimli, that still only counts as one. Now, I don't know if I recommend you go out and buy one of these. It's still a cheap plastic toy under there, it's not particularly posable, and it could be easily mistaken for Buzz Lightyear. But it was still a pretty cool project, and it's gonna look great on the shelf. Now, while I was out buying Warhammer adjacent toys, I did find these, which I actually really like. Warhammer Chibis. These are cute, they are fun, and the paint's not awful. But there's definitely some easy touch-ups that would make them perfect. If you want to see me do that, give this video a like, and if we get to 3,000 likes, I'll get right on it. So what do you guys think of these Space Marine toys? Are they cool? Do they suck? Is it proof that Games Workshop is moving away from grim dark? Let me know in the comments below, but now it's time for the real star of the show, this week's EOB Complete submissions. We put out a challenge to our community to send us before and after photos of their recently finished models to be immortalized in our videos. If you want to join in the fun, you can submit a before and after photo of your painted mini to our Discord server, which you can find in the description below, or you can post it to Instagram with the hashtag EOBComplete. Without further ado, let's look at and get inspired by what the folks have finished this week. Some custom Necron Immortals by Gremlins Eat 2, a Tyranid Maliceptor by It's Tabby Time, a Mandalorian by Commander Cadre, a Tactical Marine Sergeant by Jasuchin, a Necron Cryptek by Blacklung Raider, some Tyranid Terrain by Basho, a Stormcast Eternal by Death Arsenal, a Ghost Bear Kodiak by The Polar Burrito, some Tau Fire Warriors by Emil 33, a Conflict 47 Mech by Lenk, some Primaris Outriders by AOTL, a Stormcast Eternal by Benj7730, a Death Rattle Skeleton by Chunum, an Orc Commando Knob by Mezreg, a Necron Destroyer Lord by The Brushbreaker, a Human Wizard by Batteryman, a Plasma Generator by Septithrope, some custom Corn Berserkers by Tekamuto and 8 Deathwatch Crabs, a Chaos Champion by Ergo, some Zangors for Age of Sigmar by Goblin, a Plague Marine Sergeant by Silvaborn, a Wolf Lord by Miniature Justin, a Chaos Forge Fiend by Torolf 212, and some Space Marine Infiltrators by Dark Drake 5481. Congratulations to everyone for a job well done. It's no small feat to get paint on minis, and you all should feel really proud. Nothing gets the hobby juices flowing like finishing a project, and we all thank you for sharing your work, motivating us and the hobby community to paint our plastic. Thanks for sharing.